Hi, my name is Nico Holloway. I am currently a student at Jacksonville State University for the spring 2020 semester. I am in the organizational and systems leadership for the advanced practice nurse. This is my extreme makeover. I would like to be able to talk about the organization as conversation, the way that we need to move or migrate from the linear, mechanistic type of leadership and organization more forward to a horizontal, more people pleasing organization to see how we would get more things done and build on innovation. Some of the objectives that I would like to reach out to is to express the organizational mission, vision, and values, which is very important in the organization because those are the points that you are trying to reach, the goals that you're trying to build on. Those are what you want to become and what you want people to see of you. To identify real time examples of miscommunication and the correct way to communicate with one another to be able to advance, to identify organizational themes and culture portrayed by the conversations inside the organization when you're standing around and you listen to other co-workers talk and complain or talk and just get their point across, just to have somebody to hear them out, or some of the things we'll be talking about. Identify organization as a conversation. Define and give examples of patterns of meaning, patterns of relating, which all will build on the organization as a conversation. Definitely have to have some ways of listening, talking, and be mindful of one another, to respect one another. Identify the purpose of innovation in the organization. We definitely want innovation so that we can move forward and not stay backwards. We want to be able to detect things and to use evidence-based practices to move forward. This is my example or my personal experience of miscommunication in the workplace. When I was a new nurse, I had just taken a position inside the hospital. Before that, I did work inside the nursing home with the geriatric patients, which is totally different, for some of you who might know, than working inside of a hospital. I currently work there now. The floor I was assigned to was the medical, surgical, and renal unit. So we had medical surge patients and renal patients. I was a new nurse that had only been off orientation for a couple of days. I had a patient that had signs and symptoms of basically a bilateral pulmonary embolism or either just an embolism. They had shortness of breath. They was very fatigued. They was very sweaty, and so I called a doctor. We got a D-dimer and it was high. So I called the doctor. He ordered a stat CT scan. The radiologist called me directly and notified me that the patient had bilateral pulmonary embolisms. So this is a very, scary case. It was very important, especially me being a new nurse and dealing with this. I called and notified the doctor right away. He wanted the patient to be transferred to the IC unit stat. So I called and notified the house supervisor. She instructed me to call the ICU to transfer the patient. When I called the ICU, the person who answered the phone gave me a room number and hung up on me. Me being a new nurse and not familiar with the protocols, I assumed that it was okay for me to transfer this patient to the ICU. So me and another nurse, we got the patient up, explained to the patient what was going on, talked to the family, and we began to enter the ICU unit. Well, as we got there, a nurse stopped us and was asking me where was I taking this patient. Well, I explained to her that, this patient was going to room such and such, because they had bilateral pulmonary embolism. The nurse just yelled at me in front of the patient and other staff members, telling me that I did not call a report on the patient. And the protocol for the hospital was that before you take a patient to any department, you must call report. I notified the nurse that I called a unit and someone gave me a room number and hung up on me. That was my fault because I did assume that when they gave me the room number that they must knew that what was going on with the patient from the doctor or the supervisor even. So I took the patient on up there. She continued to yell at me and tell me that it was not done that way. I apologized and asked her, did she want me to give her report on the patient because we were already there. I proceeded to try to give the nurse report, but you could tell that she was so mad that she was not listening to me. I apologized to the patient and again to the nurse and then went back to my floor. The supervisor came to the floor and started yelling at me for transferring the patient without giving a report. I again tried to apologize and explain to the supervisor that I was a new nurse and employee. She did all of this at the desk in front of everyone. She told me that I made a lot of people mad. This miscommunication occurred because, for one, I didn't know the right protocol and the procedures, and I should have stopped and asked someone, especially my charge nurse, but she was busy. She had a caseload. Everybody on the floor had 7+ patients. The staff, we had we kind of got a little frustrated because when you have one patient going bad and you have all these other patients, you're trying to do all you can to stay above water. New nurse, still learning. I felt like that really didn't have a leadership role at that time. Nobody was really being mindful of what was going on, especially in front of the patient and other staff members. And definitely it was a breakdown in communication, the ability to relate to each other, ways of talking and ways of listening. The conversation themes that goes on in my organization, which I think kind of everybody can feel this or share with this, is definitely the complaints about staff shortage. Not just even with the nurses. Now we have staff shortage with the nutrition team, staff shortage with the environmental services, and this all affect all of us in some type of way. And it is overwhelming, especially when you're trying to take care of your patient and change the toilet paper in the bathrooms as well. The nurses in my organization feel like they have no one to speak up on their behalf. They have complaints, not even just complaints, but they have concerns. But they feel like that if you tell somebody that's in charge or somebody that's a manager, that it really is just stopping right there at that level. They kind of pat you on the back and move you along. Nurses in my organization are constantly looking for work elsewhere. The only thing that I think is keeping them there is because other people are complaining about working other departments and other places as well. They complain about the nurse to patient ratio. Once again, that is due to the shortage that we're having, and it is frustrating. Nurses in my organization feel they are not paid proper wages, especially when you have nurses that come in, staff nurses, not staff nurses, but when you have travel nurses to come in and do way less than what you're doing and actually brag in your face about how much they're getting paid. Our nurse culture is nurses that are actually living around the organization. So they're not far off, living about 10, 30 minutes away. They want to see the organization do well because this is their community as well. They're frustrated because they cannot make the ends meet with what we're doing. Overworked, underpaid nurses, they don't feel appreciated no matter how much that you give. Somebody's always asking you to do more and more and more. Nobody ever stops to say, "That a boy, you did a great job." Nurses who feel they don't have a voice. Once again, I have nurses that try to, even in staff meetings, they raise their hand and we talk about new ways that we could go towards innovation and build on things that we already have, and nobody seems to really be taking that to heart. They feel like there's no hope for innovation. It's like we have plans and stuff, but nobody's really listening. Nurses that hold great ideas but are afraid to say anything because the backlash. You have the older community, meaning the older nurses and the older staff members there, that when you even talk, they just shake their head and just drop their heads like they don't even want to hear what you have to say. Organization as a conversation. It means the patterns of meaning in the organization's mission and vision. My organization mission is to provide state-of-the-art healthcare with integrity to the people we serve. Nurses that I work with are trying to uphold this mission, but it's kind of hard when you feel like you're pushed against the wall. You have frustration from being overworked. It's always a big staff turnover, so it seems like you're out there giving your all, trying to train new nurses, old nurses, whoever comes into the organization that's new to us. We try to train them, but they come quick and go quick. An organization operating as a machine in linear fashion from top to bottom, whereas there's no horizontal positions, there's nobody there who's actually pushing for the innovation process. Organizations, conversations, patterns of relating. Patterns of relating is how people interact with each other. Nurses feel they have no one to speak on their behalf. In my organization, they express concerns about not trusting their leaders. They also are less likely to help due to caseload. Relational leading. No quality of good leadership stands alone. You have to have team to build on to help you push forward. Complex relational stance leadership patterns emerge in the relational process. Leader role is to be present and participatory. Change of language is useful in new ways of leading. Patterns of relating. All human interactions and process of relating include elements of power. You need people in order to get power. You need people to interact with, to talk with, and to build on. Relational leading, ways of talking and ways of listening being mindfulness. Patterns of meaning. Meaning is social construction. You have to have somebody to be able to talk to interact with. Gestures made by one person that is responded to by another person. Meaning is a response to a gesture. Gesture response is a meaning. The organization mission, value, vision, and values all will operate if you have somebody else to help you build up. Ways of talking, listening, and mindfulness. You definitely need to be able to communicate with people, be authentic and meaningful conversations. Listening, put your phones down, be attentive, be directly looking at them and giving them honest feedback to let them know that you are listening to them. Mindfulness, energy of being aware and awake in the present moment. Create hope, show compassion, be present and at one with those around you. Innovation is both and thinking enable innovation. Both recognize the need and value of holding multiple perspectives and useful and viable. Represent yet to be formed idea. Certain level of misunderstanding is required. Misunderstanding helps you build a more innovative process. Live in the here and now. Don't continue to live in the past. Recruit skilled innovators. Changes the organizations. You want to definitely key in on the organization's mission, values, and vision by utilizing conversation, meaning, and relating to one another. Improve your communication skills. Think about better ways that you could communicate with people and reach out to them. Respect each other and be mindful. Accept others' opinions regarding innovation and eliminate barriers. Patterns of relating. Relational relating, ways of talking, listening, mindfulness, and ways of being together and making meaning. You definitely don't want to undermine anybody else or put them in a bad predicament. Be open to listen and take on new and other challenges. Patterns of meaning, organizational vision, values, and mission. Gestures, responsive interactions. The here and now. Knowledge does not reside in the mind. It is created through social act of communicating. Talking, listening, and being mindful. Once again, you definitely need to be able to be open up to be able to use languages and form and transform meaning. Be aware of your words. Choose your language intentionally. Show compassion. Create hope. Be aware and awake in the present moment. Listen, attentive, and pay attention. Shift from mechanistic linear planning to the more horizontal people planning. The level of misunderstanding will help you build and communicate. Build trusting relationships with the co-workers and employees. I had just taken a position at the organization I currently worked at. The floor I was assigned to was a medical, surgical, and renal unit. I was a new nurse that had only been off orientation for a couple of days. I had a patient that had shortness of breath with an elevated D-dimer. The doctor ordered a CT scan stat. The radiologist notified me that the patient bilateral pulmonary embolisms. So we was transferring that patient to the ICU unit. I notified the house supervisor. She notified me that I needed to call ICU, give report. So I called the ICU unit and I got hung up on, but I called back and I spoke to the nurse that was taking on that patient. I documented her name, the time that we called and spoke to one another. I also asked her, did she need anything else? That we proceeded with the transfer, and the nurse was very happy and thankful that I did even ask and show concern about what she was doing. The change in my story was that we was relating to one another, we showed meaning, and we definitely had purposeful mindfulness. We had hope and we had dreams and we was there for one another, and that was makes the organization a conversation.